योगः कर्मसु कौशलम्.
I, Dr. Jignesh Barot, Associate Professor, PG Department of Economics, Sardar Patel University, thank to UGC Human Resource Development Center of Gujarat University for giving me an opportunity to connect with you and deliver my session on review of literature. I also thank Professor Dr. Jagdish Joshi sir, Professor and Director of UGC HRDC of Gujarat University, and Dr. Rajendra Jani, Course Coordinator, UGC HRDC of Gujarat University, for doing an excellent job by offering online refresher course and other courses. I also congratulate the center for securing the first rank among all the HRDCs of the Gujarat state and 15th rank at national level among all the HRDCs of the nation. Uh, Let me start our discussion on review of literature. The researcher takes the support of relevant literature to formulate his study plan. In the present era, an abundance number of literature is published in every field of research. We know that the current time is of an information technology, and a researcher can access literature related to his topic from any corner of the world through the internet. But scholars make two statements about such literature. These statements are: first one is there is simple too much information around for people to keep up to date. That means there is an abundant number of published work is available around the world, around us. But we should keep in mind that the another statement on the top of this, high quality information is often not easy to find. It means the literature is available in number of units, but high quality literature it is limited, and the availability of high quality literature is very difficult. So for review of literature, one should consider the high quality literature for reviewers. In this context, we should say that a review is a combined conclusion of two or more publications on particular topic, but this review often does not reach to conclusion due to bias in selecting or evaluating the literature. Therefore, for conducting correct review of literature, the researcher must understand the concept of literature review. So, every researcher or reviewer should understand the concept of review of literature before going for the review. These are some points which indicate or which may be helpful to understand the concept of review of literature. The first one is it is an account of what is already known about a particular phenomenon. It means the review of literature is an account of the available literature related to the particular research topic. It helps the researcher to know which kind of literature related to his topic or his research work is available in the world, and how and from where he or she can get it. The another point is that the purpose of literature review is to convey the information about the work already done to the new researcher. By conducting the review of literature, one can know that which kind of research work was already done in the field of the selected area for one's research, and it will be the beginning point or starting point of one's research work. The third point is review of literature is an account of previous achievements. That means the literature or reference list, it is an account of previous achievements. It indicates the achievements that by someone else before the new researcher or earlier. The researcher can know that what are the achievements of previous researchers in the field by which further planning, by which further planning and the limitation for own research can be determined. It means on the basis of earlier research work, one can determine or one can decide his own plan for research as well as limitation of for own research work. This is the importance. This indicates the importance of review of literature. The another point is review work or review of literature is a laborious task, but it is essential for successful research. We all know that doing research is itself a laborious task, and review work is an essential part of that research, which means that of course reviewing literature is also a laborious task. Collecting data, categorizing and selecting the literature for review requires hard work and patience. It indicates that review work needs hard work. It is a laborious task. And the another point or last point is element for developing new knowledge and avoid repetition. Review of literature can be helpful in avoiding the repetition in research work. It leads to develop a new knowledge in the field of particular phenomena or particular research topic. Thus, literature review is an essential part of research. Generally, the need for literature review arises during the stage of selecting the research problem and determining the direction of the research. But the main purpose of literature review cannot be achieved due to several errors occurred during the literature review or during the carrying out the review of literature. During the selection of research problem and preparing the research plan for its solution, the literature review is not given an appropriate importance. This is the main reason for error in literature review. By selecting the reference list or references for review work and the selection of problem, mostly researchers are not considering the literature review as a part of that selection process, which leads to error in literature review. And preparing the research plan. So one should put appropriate emphasis on review work. Therefore, to understand the importance and role of literature review in research, one should understand the concept and characteristics as well as objectives of literature review first. In this context, we also should understand the concept or meaning of the literature review. The literature review is intended to be related to research. Two things are clearly expected in literature review. Two things are clearly expected in literature review. First one, literature should be related to the research. That means all the literature or all the books or all the articles or all the research papers or monographs which are considered for review work should be relevant or should be related to the research topic. And the second one is to the review of the reference literature. But the literature is not reviewed in a real form when the criteria for relevance of literature and meaning of literature review are unclear. Such literature review is not helpful in research. That means if a criteria which indicates that the literature reference or literature reference literature should be related to the research work is not keep in mind, then the review work is not helpful in leading or encouraging or enhance the review, enhance the research work. There are number of definitions for literature review given by experts in the field of research, which will be helpful or which can be helpful to understand the concept of literature review. I would like to discuss some of these definitions here. The first definition is given by Dana Taylor, which says that literature review is an account of what has been published on a topic by accredited scholars and researchers. It means literature review or literature is reference list for literature review is nothing more. It's an account of published work. By whom? By accredited scholars and researchers. The another definition is available on the website of University of North Carolina. It is review of literature discusses published information in a particular subject area and sometimes information in a particular subject area within a certain period of time. That means it also indicates that the review of literature discusses published information in a particular subject area or in a certain time. The definition available on the Wikipedia says that review of literature is a body of text that aims to review the critical point of current knowledge on a particular topic. That means it is critical evaluation of knowledge available on a particular topic in the world. The another definition which is available on Bloomsburg University, Pennsylvania's website, it says that a literature review is a comprehensive summary of previous research on a topic. The literature review surveys scholarly articles, books, and other sources relevant to a particular area of research. The review should enumerate, describe, summarize, objectively evaluate, and clarify this previous research. This definition clearly narrates all the process of review work. Enumerate of literature, describe, summarize, and evaluate and clarify the conclusion arrived by the earlier research. This review work includes scholarly articles, books, and other sources, and it is a comprehensive summary. So this definition, I think, is more expressive and could be helpful to understand the concept of review of literature. Another point is that documentation of a comprehensive review of the published and unpublished work from secondary sources of data in the area of specific interest of the researcher. It is a documentation of whose? Of what? Of comprehensive review of the published and unpublished work. Published means articles, books, monograph. Unpublished, thesis, dissertations of PhD and MPhil students, scholars. So these are the definitions of review of literature given by eminent scholars around the world. On the basis of these definitions given by eminent scholars to qualify the concept of review of literature, we can deduce some characteristics of literature review. These characteristics are compatibility, clarity, transparency, and logical connection. Let me discuss all these characteristics one by one. First one is compatibility. The relevance of the literature to be selected for review is determined based on specific criteria. Only relevant references are selected for review. That means it should be compatible with the one's research work. Irrelevant literature, there is no place for irrelevant literature for review work. The another characteristic is clarity. The objective for the review of literature is predetermined, or we can say that all the objectives for the literature review are predetermined in the objective of the research. That means the objectives of the research indicates or leads to the objectives of the literature review. The another characteristic is transparency. A review may be presented or represented. That means a review work, if one person reviewed the literature and arrived to a particular conclusion, if the another person review the same literature using the same method, he will also arrive to the same findings. Okay? A review may be represented, particularly the methodology and findings. If the review is carried out by collecting the reference literature in accordance of the objectives of the literature review, leads to definitive conclusions. The process is so clear and transparent that even if two researchers follow the same process and review a same literature independently, there are similar conclusions can be drawn. And last one, logical connection. Review of literature logically correlates the available literature with the one's research work. It means there are number of books, articles available in the world related to one's research topic, and review of these sources or references will be a starting point for one's research work. It means the review of literature establishes a logical connection between the earlier research work and the next research. Generally, before conducting the research to develop the deep understanding about the reference literature and pattern of the research, literature review is essential for research. Therefore, the researcher reviews the reference literature focusing on one or more objectives. And these objectives are, first one is to obtain an overall idea about the various research areas. The basic objective for reviewing the literature is to obtain an overall idea about the various researches already done in the field related to the selected research topic. The another objective is to examine consistent and inconsistent behavioral pattern prevailing at a point of time or developing over a period of time among various variables under study. This objective clearly indicates that the reviewer wants to know, is there any inconsistency or consistency in the variables which are selected for his or her own study. The next objective is to obtain a list of cross references and or additional references relevant to one study. That means one can obtain a list of references, and using the list one can read or obtain the particular book or chapter or article from original source and can be reviewed. The next objective is to help the reader to understand the background to your study and see how it's the next logical study to be conducted in this domain. That means the reader can understand how your study is developed or what is the background of your study, what is the previous knowledge available in the world, and what you had added it. The next objective is to know the research gap in one's research area. There are ample number of literature available in the world related to the topic. We have already mentioned it many times. By reviewing that or those research work, one can understand the scope for research or where is the gap in earlier research which could be helpful to decide one's own research problem. The next objective is to develop scientific point of view for research. Review of literature enhance the view of reviewer to develop scientific viewpoint for research. How the research can be carried out or will be carried out and others. Another point is to understand the role of variables related with selected research problem. By reviewing the earlier research work or published work or reference literature, a reviewer or researcher is able to understand the relation between the variables and role of variables in his own research. The review of literature is also aimed to prevent the repetition in research. Without review of literature, repetition is possible. The new researcher is not able to know what is the existing status, exact status of research in his own field. Without this knowledge, there is a possibility for repetition. And another objective is to develop clear hypotheses for the particular research. Review of literature guide the researcher to develop his own hypothesis related to his or her own research. And last one is to decide proper sampling method and tools, etc. Review of literature guide the researcher or reviewer about the sampling method and which tools are more useful or more appropriate for his or her research. These are the benefits or objectives, we can say that these are the objective of review of literature. On the basis of this discussion, we can say there are several benefits of literature review. Some of them are: first one is it provides a precise brief idea about a book, about an article, or about a report, which leads to next step in a research work. The second benefit is it provides an idea about former researches or former research areas examined or cultivated in an area of one's interest. The third one is it provides guidelines for changing research methodology. Means research review or review of literature be helpful to determine one's own research methodology. It strengthens the justification of one's study. Review of literature provides a strong background or support for one's research work. So, which literature can be reviewed or can be included for the literature review? It includes leading articles, research papers, reports in the field, presidential addresses in seminar and conferences related to the field, top functionaries of the stakeholders. These are the main sources for review of literature. There are three forms of literature review. First one is analytical review, second one cohesive review, and third one is meta-analysis. Let me talk about all these forms. The first one is analytical review. The main objective of the analytical review is to provide theoretical support to the research. As a result, the researcher becomes aware of various aspects of the subject matter related to his or her research problem. This form of literature review is carried out by a researcher who deals with matters related to basic concepts if someone's research is related to any theory or basic concept, then the researchers should follow this form of review. The following points should be kept in mind to make analytical review meaningful. The first one is this review is not necessary in the context of general or very familiar subject matter. There are so many concepts and so many theories or generalization which are familiar to all of us, such as demand. In this context, one should not analyze the literature or review for this kind of concept. The another one is second is the review should not contain theoretical detail of a single. If we are analyzing or we are following the analytical review, a single book, a review of a single book, to understand the concept related to one's research work is not meaningful. One should review more than one books or articles to understand or to analyze the particular topic, a particular concept. The third one is a review should not only present the researcher's own opinion. It means there is a very few scope or little scope for researchers' own opinions in review work. The main criteria for analytical review are the novelty of the subject matter chosen for the review, the diversity of the reference literature, and the subjectivity for this type of review. The researcher should have the analytical perspective and ability to analyze. The another form is cohesive review. The main objective of cohesive review is to provide an actionable basis for research. Hence, this review is also called a practical review. In this form, the researcher select a sample of research for review from the universe of research done in his field of study. The researcher obtains information about various aspects of each research selected for review, such as the year of research, objectives, related variables, samples, tools or instruments, research methodology, and results. Thus, cohesive review guides the researcher to prepare a work plan for own research work. Because by conducting this kind of review, the researcher gets so many things, knowledge about so many things, about the sampling, about the analytical techniques and the conclusion of earlier research. On the basis of that, one can develop his or her own plan of research. For an integrated review, the information obtained on different aspects of each research is presented in the research report in two ways. In the form of summary by paragraph and in the table according to each aspect. Some researchers consider this presentation as an analytical review or a cohesive review. But in reality, they are just two different approaches to present information for cohesive review. The last form is meta-analysis. The main purpose of this form of literature review is to obtain a representative conclusion of the combined result of many researches carried out on a particular subject. The results of past research through meta-analysis reach society and future researches in a practical way. Meta-analysis analyzes and generalizes the results of past researches and makes the result of past researches more accessible to the society and future researches. Due to differences in the use of methods and tools for research, there is a possibility of contradiction in the result of different researches on the same subject. This is the possibility. And due to this situation, there is a scope for meta-analysis. Meta-analysis can be helpful in deriving a specific theory or concept in this situation. Thus, the process of finding a specific pattern by comparing the result of studies examining a set of irrelated hypotheses and focusing on the differences in the result is known as meta-analysis. Meta-analysis can be easier when studies on the same topic are experimental in nature or when the result of the studies can be presented in comparable statistical form. Meta-analysis provides the base for formulating hypotheses. On the basis of this discussion about the review of literature, we can say that when we are studying about the theory or concept, we should go for analytical review, and if the study is about the practical review, we should go for cohesive review, and for deriving the hypothesis or formulating the hypothesis, meta-analysis may be helpful for that. So one can decide the one or more method or more form of review literature can be used for his or her own research work or review work. There are several steps for literature review, but I comprise it in three steps. To carry out the literature review in scientific manner. These steps are preparation or planning for review, conduct a reviewer, and last one, drafting of review report. In the first step, preparation or planning for review, we can say that the success of any endeavor depends on its planning, meticulous planning. Literature review has its own prominent place in research. Therefore, before conducting a review of the reference literature, we should prepare a plan or written note. After in-depth consideration of the need, purpose, and method of it, why we are going for literature review? What is the purpose of this review work? And how the literature will be reviewed? Answer of these three questions is most important. Is the purpose of review to find the theoretical background or theoretical grounds, to find the functional grounds, or to find grounds for hypothesis? These are the three major objectives for review work. If we are going for theoretical ground, then one should go for analytical review work. If the purpose is to find the functional ground, then one should go for cohesive review. And to find the ground for hypothesis, the researchers should go for meta-analysis. Thus, the purpose of review will be helpful in determining the form of literature review. This purpose determines what form of literature review will be used for the review task and what type of references will need to be found to suit that form. The second step is conducting the review work. Here the researcher thinks how exactly will he review. In order to review, it is mainly necessary to find references, select them, evaluate them, sort out the characteristics, and combine them. The nature of these tasks is determined by the nature of the review. As for example, if an analytical review is to be conducted, It is considered which components of the theoretical literature will be needed to be analyzed. After the reviewer or reading the literature, noting the points from the reviewed literature, the last step is drafting the review report. In this stage, the researcher thinks about how to prepare his report at the end of the review. As for example, the researcher decides how to classify the laws or principles found at the end of the meta-analysis and how to make them available as a report to society or the future researcher. As for example, we have reviewed so many articles. On the basis of that articles, we should write a report of review. And we should arrive at some conclusions which leads our research work by guiding us deciding the or determining the research problem, determining the objectives for review of literature, determining the method, determining the tools for research, and this entire work we should understand in some steps also. These are planning or planning for literature. The researcher carries various tasks according to the steps of a written plan prepared for the review of reference literature. As a result, the review becomes available in written form. I have discussed, or we will discuss it in several points. In accordance with several points, the first one is selection of topic. The first work of literature review is very important for research because before starting the collection and reading of references, here the researcher decides which references to be read and which aspect of each to read. A clear answer of these both questions can be obtained by the researcher only when the research problem under review is clearly defined. If there is no clarification about the research problem, it is difficult to decide the literature which can be helpful to lead the research. That's why the first step is formulating the research problem, and which may be based on prior survey or primary literature review. The second point is collection of literature. In order to collect reference material For review, the researcher first thinks about the target population and the accessible population, because the target population indicates the scope of literature. The target population is determined on the basis of problem selection for review, but the accessible population is not always available. Accessible population is always narrower than the target population, because accessible population is a part of target population. And accessible population means literature that can be accessed from sources that are accessible to the reference literature. We will discuss the collection of literature in two sections. First one, classification of literature by source, and second one, methods for collection of reference literature. The source for reference literature can be classified in three sections: preliminary literature, a preliminary source, primary source, and secondary source. Preliminary sources are a preliminary sources is or are of reference from which a list of research or articles in a particular research area can be obtained. That means it is a source of list or index of earlier researches or articles. This list gives only information about the name of the author or researcher or researcher's reference, title of the reference, name of the publisher, year of publication, and place of publication. This is only index. We can say it is a bibliography. The second source, the preliminary source. This kind of sources or preliminary sources are sources that present direct reports. These reports are written by the researcher. Such sources are mainly include business journals, reports, books, monographs, and dissertations, thesis. These are the primary sources, because these all are written by author at his or her own self. And the third source or third kind of sources is secondary source. Secondary sources are sources whose text is not written by the researcher, but it is written by another author. The another author has prepared this information using the original text. In such references, the original information cannot be seen directly, but only a summary can be obtained. As for example, a review summary given by the another researcher in his dissertation can be considered as a secondary source. Here the author or editor describes the research done by others in his own word or in his own way. This is not a primary work. This is secondary. The another section of review of literature is method for collection. Collection of literature review is methods. The first method is invisible college approach. College approach. In this approach, researchers working on the same topic keep in touch and develop a system of communicating copies of their studies to each other. They give their own or his own research work to the other person and enhance his or her research work. This system makes available information about the research being done or completed in the very recent past in one's research field. The another approach is ancestry approach. In this approach, references given in one study are used for subsequent research. That means if we think about the thesis or article, in the end of the thesis or dissertation or article, the long reference list is available. These references may be useful for obtaining specific information or further references. The third method is descendancy approach. From a list of a report or from the list of reports on a broad area, reports on a specific topic are selected for review is known as dependency approach. The third method is use of summary services. The reviewer can select keywords or phrases and select studies for review from a list of studies. This approach is known as summary service. And last one, search on computer. This is or present era is known as information technology era. And computer has a vast source or sources of information. A researcher can use computer offline or online for search or to collect the reference literature. These are the sources or collection of literature or method for collecting the literature. The next point is evaluation and interpretation of literature. In this part or this step, a researcher ensure that the information is accurate and unbiased. Researchers should ensure that for reviewer, a reviewer should stick to peer-reviewed sources only or published in care listed or Scopus journal, dissertation, thesis work. That is, researchers should rely on reliable sources only. Some internet sources can be used to remain up to date about the research field, what is going on in the field of that particular research area in the world. Consider each study's method, measurements, and significance to evaluate whether you should use it or not. And finally, take caution when you encounter research studies, especially qualitative research studies that attempt to show causality. Be sure about that. The next point of planning is organizing and outlining. Organizing the review, organizing the literature for review is key to the construction of an effective literature. Good organization, being with reliable research, is more helpful for our research work. By organizing or after the organizing the literature, take or prepare a comprehensive research note. Group your sources by topic, delimitation, and chronology. It means one should present the literature review in chronological order or by grouping the sources in particular topic in accordance to the particular topic also. During the review or review work, pay extremely good attention to key definitions which is related to your research work and establish the importance of a particular literature or study which is going to be most important for your review. Take more detailed notes on these studies. Use reference work to keep all the information organized. Prepare a reference list in Word. which will be helpful to cite also and prepare a bibliography also at the end of the report writing. Create a topic outline before drafting the report. In your literature reviews introduction, there are certain points should be included, identifying the topic, establish the importance of that topic, define any crucial terms, engage in theoretical discussion that are necessary for logic of your literature. These points should be considered while presenting the introduction of that particular literature. Arrange the row research. This part of outlining will be considerably easier if you have done a good job in organizing the data ahead of time. After that, go for drafting strategy for review. For drafting, follow your topic outlines as you write earlier or prepared earlier. Develop and maintain logical progression. Without logical progression in report writing, we cannot present our views about that particular literature clearly. That's why the logical progression is most important part in report writing. Demonstrate consistency in the relationship between the literature you have studied. Without consistency and relationship between the literature review and our own study, the literature is vast. It is not useful for our research work. It will not. That's why the consistency and relevance of the study is most important. Likewise, emphasize the stronger study which have better measurements or more consistent methods should be included or should be emphasized in our literature review. And these kind of studies will be helpful to determine our own methodology for research work. And last one, make the implication of your information and any suggestion for further research as specific as possible. This is the plan for literature. And these are the components of an ideal review. First meaning, forward. It is an intellectual macro level general introductory remark given by a renowned scholar in the field given on a book one reviews. If you are reviewing a book, there is a forward in that book. Read that forward, which will be helpful to understand what is the author written in that book and how it will be helpful to society or a particular person or in a research or in a further research work related to the particular topic. The another is preface. What is preface? Preface is a brief introduction about a book given by the author, which covers usually most of the aspects related to origin of the idea, objectives of writing this book, readership targeted, and overall viewpoints of the author on main theme of a book. And I think preface is a very useful part of a book to understand about the book. Third one, background of the study. This is largely with respect to guidelines suggested for reviewer. So as to facilitate the scientific analytical review of literature related to a particular theme of one study over a period of time. Then objectives. There can be one or more objectives which are similar to one's research objectives, or which may. Here, if only one of the selected objectives is similar in a book under review, then a researcher should consider only that part of the study and can ignore the remaining part as well, because the book covers so many objectives, and in that case, if only one objective we are going for is covered in that book and we read entire book, it is a waste of time. So one should read only that part which is related to his or her own research work or his or her own objective of the research. Then after, sampling fact. Type of samples selected, sampling techniques used for a research, number of samples selected, etc. Information regarding these parameters is required to be compared with one's own research methodology to develop a comparative analysis having adequate scientific relationship across different variables under analysis. That means we should understand the sampling framework of earlier research work, how the sample is selected, which method is used to select the sample, and how many numbers are there in the sample. To compare the methodology or to decide our own methodology for research on the basis of review, This part is more important. Then after area of study, it is necessary to take note of the area studied by a researcher. This is necessary for the fact that finding of an area can be compared reasonably with other area. Compare, as for example, we are going for a tribal study. To compare the livelihood, we are going for tribal livelihood, and to compare the livelihood of tribals residing in one area to the another area, we should know the characteristics or earlier studies, how the earlier studies are carried out, which methods are used for this comparison, which parameters were used. So the of study is also important during the review work. Earlier work is carried out relating to which area is an important part, important thing. Then after period of the study, during the review of any literature, we should consider the period of study in the reviewer, because time factor has an important influence over a number of variables with regard to their respective relationship and intensity of an impact on various type of variables. Over a period of time, the relationship between different variables may be changed. That's why period of study is also important part. For example, irrigation development and fertilizer use. There is a changing relationship between these two parameters. So one should consider the period of study in review of literature. Then tools and techniques used. There is continuous improvement in tools and techniques used for analyze or analysis over a period of time. The tools and techniques used in earlier study may not be applicable in present study. So, or may be applicable to. So, the evaluation, examining or analyzing these enlightens merit and limitations of various techniques in applications and probability of further improvement in those tools and techniques by research. In this context, we should consider the tools and techniques used by earlier or previous researcher can be used or may be useful for our study or not. We should review that during the literature. than findings of the study, because without understanding the finding and objective of one study, there is a possibility for repetition or contradiction, or some more possibilities are also there. In view of main objectives of one study, the relevant findings needs to be collected so as to compare the same while developing a text for a study undertaken with scientific explanation of the controversial finding, if any, against the other past studies done so far. And last one, potential research. In most of the research works, the researcher narrate the potential research area in the end of the study. So, a reviewer can never or a reviewer should read that potential area, or read through or evaluate or review that potential area also. A researcher can never state a final word about the future since everything changes over a period of time. Some researchers indicate future research areas with a view to enhance usefulness of the present research finding. This part, in fact, provides the technical correct justification of a research study undertaken by a researcher. So, this part serves a researcher to properly identify his own research study in light of support it receives from various other studies completed in the field, and can ascertain himself about the need of the study undertaken as well as its justification given so far by other researchers working in the same field. These are the components of an ideal review. I have displayed the one slide about the top tips. This is not my own idea, but it is available on the website of IAD, University of Edinburgh, since 2019. There are total 8 tips for literature review, and this is the table which contains a review type for bibliometric analysis, goal of particular review type, when it can be used and when it cannot be used, scope for particular type of review, data set needed for that reviewer, and type of analysis, which is also available on elsewhere website, and I have mentioned that the link of website also. Thank you so much. Thank you once again.